Good evening, family. Thank you for joining another session of Brian and Janice today on this glorious Sunday evening. I know a lot of people are rejoicing. We're so happy that on the outcome of the election. We have so much to be thankful for. We have so many reasons to celebrate. And today we are going to enlighten you on those that are very angry and disappointed in the outcome of this election. You must understand that this is just the beginning. And as much as we support Biden and Kamala, we stand behind them 100%. We must not forget, we must continue to be vigilant. The fight is just beginning. And without anything else being said, I'm going to let Brian take you away on this eventful moment.
Hello, Facebook family. Hello, YouTube family. Thank you all for tuning in. Everyone is excited, as Janice just mentioned, in relation to the
outcome of the election.
Yes. So we are rejoicing with everyone. But at the same time, like Janice said, we do not need to become complacent. This is a very important time, very pivotal time as it relates to understanding the dynamic of history and what is going on even at this very moment. As you rejoice, I need you to take a moment to settle down and to realize that yes, we had an effect on the election. So kudos to everyone that went out and voted. Kudos to those that thought it important enough to let their voice be heard. So we continue to encourage those that did not have a chance to vote to get out and vote in this next election. In 2 years, we have another election, Senate race. So all of that now is in our minds. So the fight is not over. But I want to take you on a journey so that you understand with some of the anger that we are seeing, some of the vitriol that we are seeing spewed by our counterparts and by the European community. You need to understand where all of that is coming from. So I want to connect the dots for you in history so that you'll understand who these people are and also understand that nothing has changed as it relates to what they represent, how they present themselves, and the savagery that they come across with. It is nothing new. It is an old tactic by way of them doing what they have always done. Nothing has changed as it relates to that. So I want to take you back to, I like to take you back in the time machine to pre-America again. Okay, I need to do that today for the sake of you understanding what we are dealing with as it relates to some of the anger, some of the vitriol, like I said, some of the shrewd comments, who you see out there protesting now as it relates to Trump not being reelected. Okay, we need to understand exactly who these people are. So if I take you back to pre-America, okay?
Yes.
Take you back to the 1700s, mid-1700s. I want to take you back to the period when the French was fighting the Native American Indians over here on American soil in the American colonies. I want to take you back to that time period. Why is that time period important? It is important because what you first need to know is that everybody that came to America were not coming as it relates to being upperclassmen from the England and British communities.
Okay.
But a lot of what came to America seeking out economic opportunities
Yes.
and to get away from the harsh treatment of the king in the hierarchy were what the British call vagabonds and vagrants. Okay, so we need to understand that the white settlers that came to this country in pursuit of some type of economic opportunities, they came in pursuit of land.
Yes.
They came in pursuit of being able not only to own land, but to build homes and to develop land. Okay, so they came with a purpose of getting away from what they considered to be a tyrannical hierarchy in government as it relates to the king, and they came over here in pursuit of something. Those people that came over here in pursuit that we call settlers, okay, that we call settlers, the British hierarchy deemed them as vagrants and vagabonds. They were considered to be the lowest of the low in the European or the European community. They were considered to be trash. They were considered to be savage. They were considered to be very tyrannical, beastly type of people that came to settle this land. Now, prior to this, the 1763 proclamation, okay, after the Native American French Wars, prior to this, these people began to settle east of the Appalachians.
Yes.
Okay? All right, so now let me help you understand that. What these vagabonds did, there were two names designated or placed on them, and you can read about this in the book called Poor White Trash, 400 Years of Untold History of Whites in America. Okay, you need to get that book. It's by Nancy Eisenberg. She talks about these people had two names in particular. One was called squatters, and the other one was called crackers. Anybody that have watched Sanford and Son know that Sanford and Son will always use the word cracker. I'm going to define that for you, and I'm going to break it down to you and tell you what it means as it relates to a group of people that you see today out protesting, that's angry, that's saying all types of vile things. I'm going to help you to understand that. But the first term, squatters, comes from just the root word meaning squat, means to bend down, means not to be upright, to stand erect. Okay, it means to be below. Okay, also the term squatter meant someone that would illegally occupy land that there was no title deed for. After the 1763 proclamation, okay, Britain inherits a lot of North American land, okay, and these settlers, after this war, they move into these areas and they began to occupy land illegally that was not theirs, without any title deed, and they began to actually force those people that were on the land off the land, and then challenge them to retake the land. So these squatters were known as savage people, so much to the point to where there's one story recorded that they were so savage that they would go into overkill mode. Not only would they scalp the natives, but they would also gouge out their eyeballs. They would cut out their tongues. Okay, these people, and then they will occupy their land illegally. I got to say that again. I want to reinforce that. Illegally, and then challenge anyone that would try, that had a right to the land, that was rightful owners to the land. They would challenge anybody that would try to come and to redeem the land from them. Okay, so they were called squatters. Okay, Also, there was another term that I just told you that Fred Sanford loved to use called crackers. Who were the crackers? The crackers were also defined in the same context of as the squatters. Okay, here's the difference between the cracker and the squatter. The crackers were said to be those people that also illegally occupied land, but there was something different about them than the squatters. The squatters had what we would call a yellow tint or yellow hue to them because of certain diseases that they suffered from. In the medical field today, that would be called being jaundice.
Yes.
Okay, so they were very jaundiced, so they were yellow. The crackers were pure white.
Very pale.
Okay, very, very pale looking, but very savage as well. Okay, and they would also occupy the land. Now, let me say this. Thomas Jefferson, the writer of the Declaration of Independence, who coins the words, all men are created equal, and we go through all of this rhetoric that did not apply there again to black people, deemed these crackers, he said that the crackers were a people that were the lowest grade of British people that he had ever encountered, and that they were not worthy to be considered of the European stock. Okay, so there again, so when Thomas Jefferson writes his famous words, all men are created equal, it was because of the argument from his colleagues as it relates to the way he thought about other white people. Okay, so they said, no, you cannot, even though they're trash, even though they are crackers and squatters, we have to at least protect them because they are the ones that we're going to need in the labor force to help build this new America that we are trying to bring into existence. Okay, so some of Thomas Jefferson's colleagues checked him and said, you need to write in the language needs to stipulate that your brethren who are squatters and crackers, the worst of the worst, those that are below the degrade of classism as far as being the middle class, upper echelon of England and Britain and the Europeans, even though they're lowest of the low, all men are still created equal. Okay, so we need to define that black people were not considered to be in that terminology. That was not them saying that black people were created equal.
Right.
That was them saying that their brothers were created equal, that were of European stock. Okay, so we got that. Okay, so these crackers, after 1763, after the French War with the Indians had ended, the crackers also began to settle land west of the Appalachians. Now, here's the kicker, okay? And I want you all to understand this because in the election, we saw certain states that tipped the balance of power, so to speak.
It did that, Brian.
Georgia was one.
One, yes.
Okay. Michigan, I think, was another.
Yes, it was.
Okay. You had Nevada. Okay. So Pennsylvania may have been one. The land that these people settled on west of the Appalachians, because they had already settled east of the Appalachian, but after the war, west of the Appalachian was included, coming all the way down from the Appalachian Mountains down to the Mississippi River Delta. So some of the states that were actually included in this was Mississippi, okay, what we know now as Mississippi, Louisiana, North Alabama, so Alabama was included in that, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois, what is now known as Chicago, in Illinois, Michigan.
Don't leave out Detroit.
Okay, let's see. So these were lands that these people, West Virginia, the mountains of West Virginia, these were lands that these people settled in, the crackers and the squatters, okay? And when they settled these lands, they were really known as backwoodsmen, okay? Where the man that lived off the land, that had the haggard type of wife, you know, old grungy looking wife, with the dog, with the rifle. So the stereotype of this person is actually a true depiction of the early settlers west of the Appalachian, known as squatters and crackers. These in the mountains of Georgia, what we now know as Stone Mountain area. These people settled in those areas. In North Alabama, up in the Huntsville, outside of Birmingham, going up into the Tennessee mountains and areas. All of those areas were where these people settled. Not only that, in Mississippi Delta, you see the descendants of these settlers still there today. Okay? And guess what? They're still backwoodsmen. They're still have the groundy, scroungy looking women. They still have the dogs that are out, that are running strays everywhere. They still got the rifles. Now listen, this is very important, because these are the people that are angry because Trump was not reelected. And they are making their voice known. They feel like there is an invasion going on, excuse me, as it relates to their country, that they know that they are being weeded out. Exactly. So let me give you some more history, okay? As Jefferson continues to develop his idea, and I told you his idea was based off of John Locke's constitutional ideas. But as he continued to develop his ideas, he broke down the classes of the U.S. Okay, now this is what he said. He said there's a class of aristocrats, which are the purebloods from Britain and England. The next class is the half-breeds, because of his relationship with Sally Hemings. Okay, and he produced children that were half-breeds. From his relationship with Sally Hemings, he develops what is called the 7/8 blood law, which means that if the children of the half-breeds continue to be bred with white men, then when they get to the 7th man in the breeding of the 8th generation or child that would come forth, he would be a pure blood. So the 7/8 rule comes into effect with the constant breeding of half-breeds to pure bloods until you got to the 8th child, okay, or the 8th generation. Then that child would be, and that is a simple way of putting it. Then from that point on, that lineage would now be in the lineage, would be considered to be white or pure blood. Okay. Okay. Yes. So now you had the aristocrats, you had the half-breeds, then you had what they called the pretenders. Okay. Now, let me go into the pretenders, because the pretenders is very, very powerful. And then you have one other class after the pretenders, but let me talk about the pretenders. The pretenders was someone that would come around and try to fit in with the half-breeds, but were never accepted. Wow. When they were in the presence of those that were considered half-breeds and aristocrats, the pretenders would come around, they would try to fit in, they would try to be like the half-breeds, try to emulate what they do. and they were never accepted by the purebloods or the aristocrats.
Wow.
Okay. Now, you had one more class. This last class that Thomas Jefferson puts into place is called the overseer. And the overseer is considered to be the lowest lineage in his classism hierarchy. They were the ones that were responsible for taking care of the slaves. They were the settlers that were known as squatters and crackers. They were the lowest, considered by Jefferson and his countrymen, considered by the hierarchy of Britain and England. They were considered to be the most degradable, the lowest of the low, and the lowest of the low were responsible in Jefferson's classism of taking care of slaves. They were responsible for engaging slaves in labor on a plantation that would continue to promote the wealth of the plantation owners. Okay, so the disruption of, as it relates to this election, what you are seeing is you're seeing the descendants of the squatters and the crackers come out in full force in saying that we don't agree with what's going on. And we're coming out of our mountains, we're coming off of our land, we're coming down, and we're saying that something's not right. Y'all stole the election. Now, let me go on and continue to define this. As Jefferson defines the overseers, okay, and he says that the overseer, being the lowest of the low, this is the only job that they can actually do. Their level of intelligence will not allow them to do anything but crack a whip and be responsible for overseeing slaves.
Wow.
Okay, this is what they were relegated to. And those same squatters and crackers also became your patty rollers, which were your police, to patrol the slave. Now, let me bring you up a little bit, bring you forward a little bit in history. As these overseers, as these crackers, settlers began to kind of modernize, one thing about them is because the land that they occupied was illegal, whenever there were land laws that displaced them, they had to be mobile instantly. That is where you get the term trailer trash from. Trailer is simply a house on wheels that can quickly move from one place to another. So the whole terminology that was developed around mobility comes from the squatter and the cracker being able to get all their things together
and move
and go
quickly.
Okay.
Swiftly.
Okay, so what you see now, okay, these people have always been mobile. These people have always been angry. These people have always been upset. Okay, even the term redneck referred to, now, and I'm going to go to this, referred to people of the swamp, but it also referred to people that were not healthy. Okay, they were called rednecks simply because they did not have a healthy source
of diet.
That's right, food. And they developed
redneck,
like a plateritis, plaque, which was what they caused their skin to be red around their neck. Okay, and that's where the terminology redneck came from. Understand that these squatters and these crackers, they did not have the source of vegetables that were brought from by way of ship from Africa and the many different plants and fruits and things that were brought over also, and also started plant in the ground in the Americas, in the Caribbeans. A lot of those things that were already growing there, some of the native fruit, but a lot of fruit came over in the boat, okay, with the slaves. They knew how to plant, harvest. They knew how to do those things. So that's why on the plantations, the slave masters made sure that they ate the best. Okay, so these squatters and settlers, they did not have the same access to the fruits, vegetables, things of that nature to plant and to start growing their own food. So they ate whatever they could. Most of the time developing very unhealthy diets, which caused them to have low brain activity. And this is something you can research, also causing them to be very savage and vicious. Okay, so we see that the equate to a low intellectual, I guess you would say, capacity stems from diet.
Yes.
A lot of that stems from diet.
Yes.
And a lot of the savagery and viciousness that you see them display and demonstrate come from them eating poorly still to this day. Still to this day. So what we have to understand is that you're dealing with the descendants of those that pre-colonial, okay, and then post-colonial, those that came to this country prior to the American Revolution, came looking for a better way of life that Britain and England rejected and said, get out. Yeah. You're nothing but trash. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson also refers to them as feces.
Wow.
Literally. He said, you're the worst of who we are. And we don't want you. So get out, go. That is who we are dealing with. We have to understand that. So when we look at these people demonstrating, when we look at the anger, when we look at everything that is going on right now, it's something that should not alarm us, okay? Simply because they are representatives of who their ancestors were. Their ancestors were the same way. When their ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War, that's why even in the Revolutionary War, these settlers and crackers that fought, they were vicious. They were very savage. That is one reason that the American Revolution was successful. Was because of these settlers that were backwoods that said, no, we're going to protect, at least we have a chance here. And we're going to protect the way of life that we have made for ourselves. Okay? Now, bring you forward again. As these people fought, they gained certain rights, certain liberties concerning the land. We see that certain land laws are put in place as it relates to if you occupy the land for 5 years, for 7 years, and it changes and is amended over the years, then by right, the settlers' laws, that land is yours. If it is not, so the homesteader laws, and everybody knows what the homesteader laws are. Yes. Okay, so the homesteader laws were put in place for those people that would now occupy native land and that refused to move. That illegally said that this is my land, I refuse to move. So the homesteader's law says now, when the homesteader's law is presented, says, okay, if you migrate west, this is after Reconstruction. And I've talked about this before, after Reconstruction. So now you have a great migration west, and you have a lot of the southern so-called planters now moving also west. They are children also of the squatters and the crackers. Okay? So now, guys, put all of that together. Let me go back, and I like Thomas Jefferson because he's honest, he's blunt, he's very controversial. I think there was a duality going on with him as far as his relationship with Sally Hemings, who was a slave girl. There was a lot in his mind that he had to wrestle with. Okay, but let me tell you what he says about the cracker woman. The first time the word slut is introduced is from the colonial penners of the Constitution. One, Thomas Jefferson. He calls the women of the men known as crackers sluts. The reason that he defines them as that because he said they would come out in a drunken state, wrap their breasts with tight garments and wrap their hips with tight garments to show off their shapely figure. Now listen at this now. Why is this important, family? Because we have taken the terminology of the enemy and we apply it now to our women.
That's exactly right. That's
okay.
it.
How significant is that? That our women were never called sluts. The term slut comes out of the mind of
European.
The actual European that pens the Declaration of Independence, and he's talking about the women of the men that's called crackers and squatters. And he says about their women that they are drunken women, they are loose women, they wrap their body parts in tight garments to show off shapely figures, and yet somehow we have adopted the same terminology.
Wow.
And we apply that. So that's why I think women, black women and black men, some black men can be crackers because they act the same way as what was defined as a cracker, and how a cracker act. They act the same way. How did they define a cracker? A cracker was a man that would get in a drunken stupor. That's now, and this is all you can read. You can read this. Get the book. 400 Years of White Trash. You need to get the book. He defines cracker men as drunken savages, men that do not go to church, that barely go to school, and most of them don't finish school if they start school, that cannot interpret the king's English, that cannot properly speak the king's English. This is how he interprets them. They savagely dance about. They treat their women with the utter disrespect. They have no regard for their women. They have no regard for their children. This is how he defined their men. And somehow that has also been now translated to the African American male. We act like crackers
and squatters
and sluts. Okay? So the crackers and the squatters, the crackers and the sluts, the trailer trash, all of that, now we, for some reason, taken on that persona. That is not who we were. No. I need you all to understand that. That terminology, that was never referred to us. So don't ever call your brother the N-word because it is a variation of cracker. It just applied and made applicable to the black person. Okay? And don't ever call your woman a whore. That is the same word as slut made applicable to the black woman that we now call whore. So we need to understand that all of this stuff has an origin. It is history. When we see what is going on right now, okay, when you see those women out there with the signs that says we're not going to stand for this, they stole the election, when you see our counterparts out there with their rifles in their pickup trucks with the Trump flag and the American flag on the other end, you have to understand who those children are. They are descendants of the squatters and the crackers. They are descendants of those that illegally occupied the land, that says, we don't care. We're going to challenge you if you want to come back on this land and you're saying that this is your land. No, it's our land now.
Even though they didn't own it.
Okay. And guess what that means? So now you have to understand why I said we cannot relax. Because even with Biden and Harris being there, when Biden says we need to return to the values, and I want to thank one of my students, Nancy Fitzpatrick, we were talking a little bit earlier, but one thing that she pointed out is she said that Biden in his speech talks about returning to the values of America. What were the values of America? The values of America never had black people included in them. So we cannot relax. See, the values of America go back to the squatters and the crackers. Goes back to the hierarchy of Britain and England. It did not include those that were not citizens. It did not include black people. So when they talk about values of America, they're not talking about you. So even with all this dancing and rejoicing that we're doing in the street, and yes, there's a time of jubilation, and I believe in jubilation. I think there's a time to celebrate, but now is not the time to think that because there has been a Democratic election and Democrats won, that they are for black people. Don't get it twisted, because the system was not designed for us. So you got to understand they're operating still in the system. And what you must also understand is that the system only works for the bourgeoisie. And I'm grateful that the bourgeoisie did what they did. They did a great deed to get their people out and vote. And I'm grateful for that. So don't misquote me here. Don't misunderstand me here. But the system is designed to work for what Thomas Jefferson called the half-breeds. And the half-breeds are those that are in position politically, or that get in position politically, and that political system benefits them while it leaves everybody else out. Understand that. So now you will still be dealing with the 80% of African American people that are below poverty. You will still be dealing with the 80% of African American people that are receiving poor education, poor health care. You're still going to be dealing with them. And guess what? The fight is going to be on, because now the squatters and the crackers' children are saying, no, you're not going to take our medial jobs. You're not going to disperse our medial jobs to immigrants. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight. Even if we do not get the president back that we want, we're going to make our voice be known, so to where you have to pay attention to us. And that is what the media is doing right now. It is paying attention to those that said, no, you stole the election. Black folks, we got to get conscious enough and aware enough to realize that a Biden-Harris ticket is not your savior. Period. A Biden-Harris ticket, as good as it may look, and I'm going to just say it's eye candy. It doesn't mean anything if we don't demand anything from them.
That's right.
So now, Black Caucus, okay, which I have called them black folks in white with white minds, we must demand your NAACP,
yes,
Negroes that accept all type of colored folks. That's what I call it. Okay? Your Urban League, all of these different entities, you need to tell them, hey, we want something done for us.
yes.
See, because one thing that I've recognized right off the bat is that Kamala's not black. She's Asian, she's Indian, she's not black. Her Jamaican father is hierarchy father. He's of the mixed breed Jamaican. He's not the black Jamaican. Most people don't even know that.
That's right.
Okay, so listen. She's never said that she's black. She's colored. And here you got Joe Biden, who is a staunch racist, He's in there, but we have to demand of the racist. It's a good thing to know that he's a racist. I can deal with a racist in my face knowing that he's a racist. Now we got to deal with this old racist because he's an old racist. He go way back there, the racist. Okay, so we all just need to do our research on Joe Biden. He is not the savior of black people. And we should stop looking for a white man to be our savior, because he's also the descendant of the cracker and the squatter. So I'm going to leave you at that. I'm getting excited.
Oh, Brian. Yes, sir.
Okay, we got to leave at that.
Okay, have we been on an hour yet? I don't.
Yeah, it's too close to it. But we need to wind it down.
Brian's winding it down because
Okay.
he's on a roll, and he knows he has a lot more where that came from, and all these books that are around him that he reads constantly. He knows what he's talking about. He's done his research. He's tried and true. This brother is on it, and he's on top of it. He only wants to educate us, not to make us ashamed or afraid. He is only wanting to educate us. We need to understand now is the time that we need to go full throttle.
Absolutely. It's called righteous indignation. Okay? Righteous indignation. If you truly love your people, get mad enough to do something about the least of these. Don't get comfortable thinking that you got it. Because I'm going to tell you, and you might not see this, but tomorrow you could be in the welfare line, or you could be applying for food stamps. The way that this system is going right now, politically, okay, you could be tomorrow without a job. So, and we're going to do a show, and I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that the political balance of power, this election is very eerily scary to the 1876-1877 Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes election. Okay? And what you have there in that election is the role reversal. And I want to talk about that next week. I'll deal with that. I want to show you how this election models 1876 and 1877, after Reconstruction ends in 1875 with Ulysses S. Grant going into the Rutherford B. Hayes administration. It is almost identical to what we're looking at with this transfer of power from Donald J. Trump to Joe Biden. I'll talk about it next week.
Wow. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thanks for your input. Please share this video with as many people as you can. We need an awakening. It is definitely time for us to be awake. And like I said before, be vigilant like never before. We need to let our voices be heard. We need to let them know that, listen, we're not asleep. We know we are really excited for Biden and Kamala. Don't get me wrong. We are excited to have a Democratic Party, and we're excited to have a woman in the White House. Don't get it twisted. We need to demand our due justice. And now is no better time than the present. Thank you all. Have a great night. And I will start a watch party immediately after this. We love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.